Hi, Michael. Hi, Ernesto. Today's topic is about illness, and I'm going to read the question. It says, there are people who have just arrived at the teachings, and they encounter physical problems or different characteristics. What is the best way to face the illness and the bodily pains while the self-inquiry is still in an initial state, and the trust in the surrender to Bhagavan is still fragile?
Well, it's like all these things. These when we first come to Bhagavan, um, of course, our understanding of his teachings is very limited, and and we only just beginning on the path of self-investigation and surrender. So we're like a tender plant, but that is like a small tree, but it's just beginning to sprout. We need protection. Bhagavan, whatever happens according to happens, like illness and bodily pain, all these things, these are all according to prarabdha, all according to our destiny. Bhagavan knows better than we do how much we can bear. So if he gives us illness or bodily pain or something, he knows that he knows when to give it and why he's giving it. So from our point, it may seem from an external point of view, but a person who is very just beginning on this path and just beginning to understand Bhagavan's teachings and beginning to develop faith in the path of surrender and in self-investigation, such a person is like a very tender tree, but it's just begun to sprout, needs all the protection. But Bhagavan may give that person bodily illness and pain and all these things. This is known only why he does so. That is why he gives us what experience at what time in our life is known only to him. He knows what is best. But if we understand, that is, Bhagavan is actually the pure awareness. That's his real nature. But from our point of view, Bhagavan is God and Guru. As God and Guru, he is, by definition, he is all-knowing, omniscient, all-powerful, omnipotent, and all-loving, omnibenevolent. So since he is all-knowing, nothing can happen without his knowledge. Since he is all-powerful, nothing can happen without his allowing it to happen. And since he is all love, all loving, nothing can, he will not allow anything to happen that is not good for us. So whatever may happen in our life, whether it be illness or pain or whatever it may be, or not only bodily pain, there's pain of bereavement, there's a pain of loss of those who are dear to us. In this present time with this coronavirus, many people are losing their jobs, losing their livelihood, and they are faced with so many financial difficulties. They may not be able to pay the rent, and they have small children they have to take care of. And I mean, this present pandemic, it's affecting people in so many ways. Possibly in our Western societies, we are to a greater or lesser extent cushioned, but there are parts of the world where people are already very, very poor, and the economy is devastated by this pandemic. It's hitting people in so many ways. But why all these things are allowed to happen by Bhagavan, we can't understand why this is good for us or good for those who are affected, for each person concerned, but it is so. So when we come to Bhagavan's path, we first need to try and develop a clear understanding of his teachings. Of course, at first our understanding will be imperfect, but the more we read his teachings, think about his teachings, and try our best to put them into practice, the clearer these things will become, and the easier it will be for us to accept whatever may happen. The question is, what is the best way to face these things? It's the same. but one answer to all questions is the answer that Bhagavan has given is turn within and investigate yourself. That answer is actually the only satisfactory answer to all questions. But most of us are not satisfied with it because we want something else. We want this seems very abstract, very difficult, or whatever. It may seem to us, it's not so, but it may seem to us. So there were people who some of the people who lived with Bhagavan said, Bhagavan, I want to ask you a question, but I'll only ask this question if you promise not to use your Brahmastra. Brahmastra means the most powerful weapon. Bhagavan's Brahmastra is who am I? Because whatever people ask Bhagavan, he tends to bring it back to this question. Who is asking this question? Who is concerned about this problem? Because that is actually the solution to the problem. Turning within and knowing ourselves is the only solution. So Bhagavan can't resist using his Brahmastra, but people were not satisfied. This is because of our immaturity, we're not satisfied. We want Bhagavan to say something consoling or something, but more in accordance with our likings, because that all shows our immaturity, our lack of when we complain about Bhagavan using his Brahmastra, that shows our immaturity, our lack of willingness to turn within and surrender ourselves completely. So sometimes when Bhagavan saw that people weren't ready to accept his deeper teachings, which means his Brahmastra, his weapon of who am I, when they weren't willing, he would dilute his teachings to make it palatable and acceptable to them, according to each individual. So that's why sometimes he seemed to approve of other spiritual practices. If people came to him and said, but when I find this self-investigation, this Atma-vichara is very, very difficult. Can I do meditation instead? Bhagavan said, oh, yes, you can do meditation. You meditate on anything you want to meditate on. But because Bhagavan is not going to force us to do what we don't want to do. But if we come to him and say, Bhagavan, I've tried all this puja, I've tried all this japa, I've tried all this dhyana, I don't seem to be getting anywhere. Bhagavan will say, who has been trying? Find out the one who has been trying, then your problems will be solved. So Bhagavan will, if we allow him to, he will always use his Brahmastra, because that is the only real solution. But if we are unwilling to accept his Brahmastra, then he will dilute his teachings to suit our level of spiritual development. So since the question is, what is the best way? The best way is only self-investigation. If you ask what is the second best way, I don't know, because I know only Bhagavan's teaching. I'm concerned only about Bhagavan's teachings.
Maybe what Bhagavan said that if you can't do Atma-vichara, surrender or begin to learn to surrender. No.
Yes.
Nothing. No one begins to surrender absolutely at the first time. No, you must to train that. No,
because ultimately we can surrender ourselves completely only by self-investigation. So ultimately, self-investigation and self-surrender are one and the same path. However, that is self-surrender. That is which, in order to surrender ourselves, that means in order to surrender this ego, we need to investigate ourselves. But in order to begin to surrender ego, we first need to a certain extent, we need to be willing to surrender our will, our likes and dislikes, our desires and attachments. So surrender begins not with surrendering ourselves, but with surrendering our will, our likes and dislikes and desires and attachments. So yes, yes. So sometimes Bhagavan did, for people who said this self-investigation is too difficult or something, Bhagavan said, okay, leave it all to God, surrender yourself completely. Because that is another way of, that is the most effective way of bringing them to the path of self-investigation.
And if we speak about the surrender of our likes and dislikes,
yes,
I think is very necessary that you detect what you don't want to surrender, that it's supporting your persistence to don't give your arm to, no?
Yes, yes. If we were fully willing to surrender, we would be able to surrender here and now. What makes surrender difficult or seem difficult is because of our unwillingness. So there is some of our likes and dislikes are much easier to surrender than others. Some things we're not so particular about. I may like a particular thing, but if I don't get that, I'm not much bothered by it. But some of our likes and dislikes are very, very strong. So those strong ones are the challenges. But sometimes people ask the question, how to surrender? The only way to learn how to surrender is to begin surrendering. That is slowly, to stop feeding the likes and dislikes, to stop feeding the desires, to stop giving strength to these things.
And detecting and identify the secret benefit that you don't see, and then because you can say, I surrender my desire of that, or I surrender my need to have the reason in the conversation, no?
Yeah.
But you don't see what is your real benefit to continues, no?
And also, surrender isn't something that we do. Surrender. Some people talk about you surrender one desire at a time. First you surrender this desire, then you surrender that desire. It doesn't work like that. That's why Bhagavan talked about Vishaya Vasanas collectively. Vishaya Vasanas means our inclinations to attend to anything other than ourselves. These are the seeds that give rise to all likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. So the more we turn our attention within, the more we are weakening the whole bundle of Vishaya Vasanas. We're not weakening one by one. It is the collectively that army of Vishaya Vasanas is being reduced in strength. It's not, of course, sometimes when we are confronted with particular desires, but we find very strong. For example, sexual desire, for most of us, that is a strong desire. So there may be, like that, there may be other desires that are particularly strong, but we can't, the only way to give up these things is by turning within more and more. In the early stages of surrender, if someone has said, someone like you said, some people say to Bhagavan, oh Bhagavan, I find this Atma-vichara is too difficult for me. Then he says surrender. In that early stage of surrender is based upon devotion to God. In that early stage, before you come to self-investigation, surrender is based on your surrendering to God. So you have to have faith in God. You have to believe that God is all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful, and that God is, because he's all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful, whatever happens is happening according to his will and is for good for you. So the more you understand that, and the more you trust God, and the more you love God, the more willing you will be to accept whatever happens as his will for your own good. So even before we come to the path of self-investigation, we can be surrendering because of that, on the basis of our devotion to God.
What I don't understand you very well, Michael, when you say, or I think that I understand that you say, is not the way is not to surrender a thought after a thought, no, a desire after a desire. Is a surrender, a collective surrender, you say, okay. No? But it's possible that when you try to surrender a collective of thoughts or desires, you are not seeing what really you need to surrender, because you say, I surrender my need to feel intelligent in the conversations with other people, for example, no? But maybe you say that, and all the thoughts that collective, no, are relation with this idea, but you miss to see the real benefits, no, the secondary ganancey, no, that are in the shadow.
Okay, I will try and explain what I mean in terms of self-investigation. That is, when we are trying to turn with our attention within, so many thoughts may arise to distract us. One day, if, for example, we have a job and there's a problem in office, that problem about what's happening in the office will be coming back again and again. Or another time it may be some family problem or some financial problem or this or that. There'll be some preoccupation or other, or we'll be looking forward, we're going on a holiday and we're looking forward to some thought about. All sorts of thoughts arise when we are trying to turn our attention within. It doesn't matter what the thought is. If instead of allowing ourselves to be carried away by that thought, in other words, to be carried away by the vasana that gave rise to that thought, if we turn our attention within and cling to self-attentiveness, we are thereby reducing the strength, not just of that one desire, but of the whole collection of desires.
Yes. And I absolutely accord with that, no?
Yes.
I say invisible,
in that sense, but I say it.
invisible, powerful of the grace are reducing weakness, become weakness, the strength of these vasanas, no?
Yes.
And
that is, if we try and give up an individual desire, for example, many people, well, we're all in one way or other troubled by sexual desire. There are some people who want to renounce the sexual desire. But if you try and renounce that sexual desire, you can do all sorts of things. You can live a celibate life. You can stop looking at women. You can do all sorts of things. But the desire is there. It's still there in your heart. So, effectively, only to the extent that our Vishaya vasanas collectively are reduced in strength by our turning within, or by our relying entirely upon God. But relying entirely upon God, that is part of the process of self-investigation, but that can only take us so far. Because what is God actually? God is that which is shining in us as I. So if we really want to depend on God, we have to cling to I. So the more we turn our attention within, the more that every moment we attend to ourselves, rather than attending to something else, we are strengthening our liking to attend to ourselves. That's our Satvasana, and we are weakening all our Vishaya vasanas. So that is the way forward. We cannot, if we've got particular desires and attachments, we can't just, we can't give up a desire just because we want to give up a desire, because that's one desire against another desire. I want to be free of sexual desire. So I've got the sexual desire and I've got the desire to be free of sexual desire. These two desires are then clashing.
I remember we talked about that when we returned to Bilbao. Do you remember in the car?
Yes.
We talk about this. Carlos, you are going to tell something, no?
Yeah, well, yes, it's one question about the pain, and I think we've asked you this question before. It's a meeting in Zoom, but I'll do it again because I've heard people who say that pain is pain, and no matter who you are, Ramana, Krishna, and etc., you'll feel it, whether you identify with your body or whether you don't identify with your body anymore, or if you are a regular person. There is no escape from the experience, no? So on the other hand, we have Ramana's example, and the way he dealt with pain was astonishing. Yeah. So I think I heard you say that Ramana said that he felt the pain but that pain was no different from who he was.
Yeah, yeah.
So is
Bhagavan
pain
said,
unavoidable even in people who have lost? I mean, there is no identification with the body, obviously,
well,
but there is still the sensation of pain.
first we need to be clear about what is Bhagavan.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
we are talking about Bhagavan, how Bhagavan bore the pain of the hornet stinging his leg, how he bore the pain of cancer, we are taking Bhagavan to be a person. So when Bhagavan said, yes, there is pain, but it's not other than me, he gave that answer according to the view of the onlooker who took him to be the body. But what Bhagavan actually is not that person that he seemed to be in our view. What Bhagavan actually is that infinite space of pure awareness. In that infinite space of pure awareness, there is no body, no world, no pain, nothing. It is just pure awareness, pure infinite happiness, nothing other than that. But because we identify ourselves with the body, we mistake Bhagavan to be the body. And when we see Bhagavan, we see hornets sting him, that must be painful. We see severe cancer, and the doctor's operating, that must be painful. So when people ask Bhagavan, isn't it painful? Yes, there is pain. But the pain, he didn't even say, I'm aware of the pain. He said, yes, there is pain, but the pain is not other than me. That is what we see as a person, and what we see as that person having pain, in his view, is only pure awareness.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So his answers are very, very deep, but we interpret them according to our view. So we think, oh yeah, this person Bhagavan, this is a person Ramana Maharshi, he is experiencing pain, but he doesn't see the pain as other than him. That's our way of understanding him. But what he actually means is what we see as pain, what we see as Ramana Maharshi, what we see as this world is what he sees as himself, pure awareness, nothing else.
Yeah.
So
when we see
manyness, he sees oneness. But what we are seeing is the same thing, because there's only one thing that actually exists. So he is seeing the one thing as it actually is. We are seeing the one thing as the many things.
He see no. He see that he's the substance of the pain, of the illusion, of the illusion of the pain, the substance.
What is a pain? It's an experience that arises within awareness. He is that base awareness, not even that is that there is the base awareness, the pure awareness I am. That's the fundamental awareness of our own existence. That is the only reality. Within that space of pure awareness, this thing called mind appears. Mind is also a form of awareness, but the difference between mind and that pure awareness, within the space of awareness called mind, so many phenomena appear. Body, world, pain, happiness, pleasure, all these things appear only within the space of mind. In the space of pure awareness, there is no space of mind. That is, in the view of the space of pure awareness, there is no space of mind and there are no phenomena. But we have now, as ego, we have risen as this space of mind, and we see all these phenomena. So, but the ultimate substance is that pure awareness. The immediate substance is not pure awareness. The immediate substance is ego. That is, in some Upanishads, it said, everything is Brahman. In Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, what has Bhagavan said? Ahandeya yabamam. Ego itself is everything. So is there a contradiction? The Upanishads say everything is Brahman. Bhagavan says everything is ego. That seems to be a contradiction. It's not, because everything, all phenomena are nothing but ego, because they're all an expansion of ego. What is ego? Ego is nothing but the pure awareness. If we investigate it, we'll find it's.
This is the reason, no, of the Sanskrit. The Brahman is a form, and it's emptiness, and emptiness is a form, no.
Yeah, all sorts of things are said. Yes, I don't know. Yeah, it is Brahman is neither a form nor is it emptiness.
Yes.
Brahman
Yeah.
is the fullness, but that fullness is what appears as all these forms. But in whose view does it appear? It doesn't appear as forms in the view of Brahman, because Brahman is formless. It's only in the view of ego that all these forms appear. As Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Uruvam Tanayan, Uruhu Paramatran. If oneself is a form, world and God will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how? So all these forms appear because we've limited ourselves as a form. So it's only in the view of ourself as ego that forms seem to exist. Brahman is, as Bhagavan says there, it's the infinite I. That I means EYE, like this I. He's using that as a metaphor for awareness. So Brahman is the infinite awareness in which there are no forms. Only in the finite awareness called mind do forms appear. So all phenomena, according to Bhagavan, are ego, and ego is nothing but pure awareness. So what they say in the Upanishads is correct, but an important step is missed. That is, all things are ego. Ego is pure awareness, is Brahman. So why that what Bhagavan talks about ego, that's a crucial, that is the key to understanding Advaita correctly. That is, Advaita has been understood in so many ways by so many people. Bhagavan has simplified it all by pointing out that the root of everything is ego. That is, in the
25.
the Vedanta, in Advaita generally it is said, well, problem is avidya, ignorance. But for whom is ignorance? Only for ego. So what they say, ignorance is a problem, that is true, because ignorance is the very nature of ego. What is ignorance? Ignorance of what? Ignorance of our real nature. As ego, we are always aware of ourselves as something other than what we actually are. So we are ignorant of our real nature. So that ignorance is the very nature of ego. So, but by emphasizing that, rather than emphasizing the ignorance, Bhagavan emphasizes that the problem is not, obviously ignorance is a problem, but who is ignorant? I am ignorant. Investigate that I, then we find out what we actually are, the ignorance disappears. Because what is it ignorance of? It's ignorance of myself. Who am I? We have to come back to this, who am I? So yeah. Bhagavan has simplified and clarified the whole entire philosophy of Advaita. He's brought it down to fundamental basic principles, and he's clarified it so much.
The traditional Advaita stop in this avidya, but don't go farther.
Yes.
Who is the ignorance? No, who is that field?
Of course, all Gaudapada, Shankara, they all knew this, but according to the needs of the time, they had to, like Shankara had to argue with other systems of philosophy. Bhagavan never went and argued with any other systems of philosophy, but it was necessary for the benefit of the world at the time of Shankara. It was necessary for Shankara to appear in that form and to go and conquer other schools, argue against other schools of philosophy, in order to establish that Advaita is the true is the correct interpretation of the Prasthanatraya, the Upanishads, Brahma Sutra, and Bhagavad Gita. That was according to the need of that time. Bhagavan, according to the needs of our time, has come and simplified everything.